Welcome to Lights Out. I'm Johnny Roberts. Today on the program, we have Hall of Famer Bobby Labonte and Fox Sports' Bob Pocrass. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, please click the subscribe button and help us to grow. Now, if you're watching NASCAR racing last Sunday from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, you might have said, hey, why doesn't NASCAR just end this race under the rain delay and declare Tyler Reddick the winner? Well, that would have been the case a couple years ago, but the sanctioning body is working very hard to try to get a race, if at all possible, to its full scheduled length. That was a possibility this time around because of the wet weather tire and because of the fact that NASCAR will use that tire on any racetrack a mile in length or less or on a road course. Now, the idea is that there's so much on the line these days with the playoff implications that they want to get the race to a full length. Again, if I had anything to say about it, I would have said it would have been better if NASCAR would have let the teams determine when they took off the wet weather tires and put on the slicks. I have an idea that we will see that in the future, but what you saw this last weekend is a sign of things to come when wet weather affects one of these shorter racetracks. Well, if anybody knows what's going on in the garage area, it's Fox Sports' Bob Pocrass, and he joins us now on Lights Out. Bob, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. What are your initial takeaways from what transpired at New Hampshire with that wet weather tire?
I don't know what to think. NASCAR had kind of indicated that the wet weather tires were going to be used to get a race restarted quicker or started earlier. But I thought, heck, they're well past halfway. It's a heavy storm with lightning. I didn't think they were going to run them, but obviously they wanted to see how they would work. New Hampshire is, a somewhat high-speed short track, and so I think they wanted to see how they would work there, and so they went ahead and used them. What amazed me is that teams are asking on the radio, "Are we going to be allowed to do this? Are we going to be allowed to do that?" And I think going forward, there needs to be some clarity. There needs to be some understanding of how the procedures would be, and they kind of had to let the drivers who weren't full on fuel to fill up because they knew they weren't going to have live pit stops because of how wet pit road was. So that kind of threw the strategy into a little bit of disarray for some teams as well. So, I think it was great they got to the finish. They got a full race completed. I think that's a good thing, but part of me still isn't so sure that you couldn't have just said, hey, Tyler Reddick, you're the winner. You picked the strategy when the rain was coming, and that was good enough.
Well, Bob, we saw a really big piece of the puzzle fall into place with Chase Briscoe officially being named by somebody other than Christopher Bell as the replacement for Martin Truex in the 19. What do you see in the future there? There's still a lot of things to be decided.
Well, I mean, as far as Chase Briscoe, I think the pressure is on. I mean, you talk about a guy who has 12 top fives and 125, 126 cup starts, and Joe Gibbs is going to expect him to win right away. He has just one cup win, just one. So I would say that the pressure is on him. The pressure is on crew chief James Small to produce right away there in 2025. And, a lot of questions will have to be answered about just how good Chase Briscoe is. So he's the first piece of the Stewart-Haas drivers to find a ride for next year. Where do the other three go? I think Josh Berry is the favorite for the Wood brothers. Not saying he'll definitely be in it, but I think if you ask me today, that's where I would slot him in. Noah Gragson, I think, is being talked to by a lot of teams. Probably, I think he ends up at front row, but again, it's all real fluid situation. If you asked me a few weeks ago, I thought Gragson potentially was a favorite for the 21. And then Ryan Preece, I'd lean more towards Xfinity for him, possibly remaining at the Haas with the Haas factory team.
Yeah, now that's an interesting thing too, Bob. The fact that Gene Haas is still going to be involved in this thing. I'm sure there's a huge backstory as to how we came about this, but I kind of feel like, again, there's a big question: who is he going to be associated with? Because we know you can't have that single team out there without some type of association. But also, what is this going to mean to still have him involved in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly you want somebody like Gene Haas involved in the sense that they have there's a lot of money there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and he had been sponsoring a car in addition to owning teams. So, you see, I think he always planned to sponsor a cup car. It just was a matter of how. Was it going to be his own cup car or was it going to be somebody else's cup car? And I think when there were talks about Front Row potentially moving into the Stewart House building, there was the thought, well, maybe he'll sponsor Cole, Custer, or somebody at Front Row. Now that Front Row won't be moving into the building, now that Gene Haas is going to own one of those charters, you got to feel like, well, that's probably going to be Cole's ride, most likely there on the Cup side. The thing is that they've always wanted to keep that Xfinity program. They're building cars for the Sieg Racing. They're building cars for AM Racing. Those are all Fords. They want to keep that business. They feel like that's a good business to have. And so I would think in order to keep that business, they're going to have to remain Ford. So it'll be a question of can they have an alliance with anybody? I think they can go at it with alliance, be a little bit more difficult, but I think they can do it with considering the experience they have. And it's, but it is a good thing that that at least some of the people who are at Stewart House Racing can potentially stay there and either work on these Xfinity cars that they're building or work on the One Cup car.
Bob, what does it say about the competition level in the Cup Series right now that drivers the likes of Joey Logano and Kyle Busch are struggling like they're struggling?
It says that whenever you have change, that it takes drivers who have a lot of experience, who have a lot of wins under their belt, a little bit of time to adjust to not, look, you say it's the third year of the car, but now people are really kind of, especially because you don't have practice every week or real practice every week, teams and organizations are really starting to hone in on what's the best way to drive this car and does it fit into the wheelhouse of some of your drivers who've shined in previous cars. You saw it back with Jeff Gordon, the quote unquote 5-in-5 rule. Remember when they changed a lot of the way the car traveled through the corners? This is another one of those things. This car has a very tight kind of window, very tight sweet spot. You hit it right and you're really good. You're just a tick off and you're really off. And I think that's what you're seeing with Logano and Kyle Busch. They're used to driving cars a certain way, and now, especially for Logano on the intermediate tracks, you have to drive it a little bit differently, and he's still trying to find the feel.
Bob, thank you so much, man. It's great to talk to you. Always appreciate the information, man. Keep up the good work and hope to talk to you very soon.
Thanks. Anytime a show that has lights in the title, I'm all in.
Want to welcome into Lights Out Hall of Famer, Bobby Labonte, champion, whatever you want to call him. We call him a friend. Bobby, it's great to talk to you, man. Bobby, you're able now with this new gig that you have with Joe Gibbs, being a brand ambassador. How important is it for you, being a lifelong racer, to still be involved like this?
Well, it's real important for me, and I love racing. I still love racing, and I'm not ready to. I just talked to a friend of mine and that just retired from motor racing outreach, and he doesn't miss the travel, but he misses the people. And so, when you're, have done it like we have, and it's been part of our lives as far as in the NASCAR, but with my family growing up in racing, I mean, it's just it's what we love to do and love to be around people.
Bobby, I'm sure hanging out with me, you heard me say it a million times, but I always say that in racing, there's such a different level of people. There's a competitor, there's a winner, and then there's a champion. But I think there's also another level, and that being a Hall of Famer. Each one, I think, is more difficult to achieve as you climb up that ladder. How important was it to you along the way to reach each of those goals? Winner, champion, and then Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, it's, obviously, I was looking at some stats the other day, and Dale Earnhardt only won 10% of his races, 10 or 11% of his races in the Cup Series, right? Um, but it's a lot of losses over the wins, and and nobody knows everybody's story, but to get to the winning level takes so much commitment and time and dedication, and then another level of the champion and championship, and then the Hall of Fame was the whole story. When we did that, to me, the championship, when I won the championship, it was in the moment at that time. I didn't think about anything else. And then, but the Hall of Fame was kind of a reminder of your whole life, and the achievements that you had. But through all of those and all the people in the Hall of Fame, if you could interview every one of them about their failures or their tough times, the hard times, it's that bucket's way more full than the achievements, right? And I think that's what a lot of people don't see. And but when we put it all together that night in Charlotte, it reflects back on your life and through the good times and the bad times, and it's a lot of good ones. But man, not it was not an easy process to get there, and so for us to have been able to squeak in that one was pretty amazing. So I loved it.
Yeah, and congratulations again on that too, Bobby. You're a guy that's very qualified to make this to make a statement on this. I believe growing up in racing, being around it, having your family around it. In general, what do you feel the state of NASCAR is in right now? I know some people have some complaints about things, but man, you can't argue with an uptick in popularity, an uptick in TV ratings, and it just seems like there's a better buzz around the racetrack these days.
Well, I mean, I think that I'm living I'm gonna cut my arm and it's gonna bleed NASCAR, right? I mean, it's just the way it is, right? So I mean, the world has changed, times have changed, but at the end of the day, I think that through like NASCAR, like everybody, I mean, ups and downs and the sport changing and having heroes here and leaving and more heroes coming in and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics to make this thing go around. And what I think that when I look at it, I mean, when people say, man, it used to be more exciting back in the day, I'm like, ooh, man, there's only 5 cars in lead lap. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe it was exciting, but it seemed like now it's like really exciting to me, and so and I look at it and I get to go to some races and I get to sit in on, conversations and this and that. And I mean, the characters are, the cast of characters and the teams, and, that's, sure, a lot of things have changed, but, I think when you look at the on track and, I'm a fan when I watch on TV, I never see a bad race. I always look at it like, okay, so Martinsville, wasn't as good this time. Well, start over on Monday to be different. It just is what it is. And so I see the hard work and effort that people put into it too, as well. And so, what that dedication is. And, I think racing, I watch every race if I'm not at one, if I'm not there. And I mean, I think it's darn good, I mean, so I'm not going to hear anybody talk about not being a good race or whatever. I mean, so I think racing's really good. I think the popularity, and I got to talk to some people in California about, hey, I started watching racing because of you and the 18 car, interstate batters, 18, blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, it's great to hear that. And it's also great to hear the ones that say, hey, I've never been to a race before. This is my first one. I'm like, good. You will be hooked before the day is over. And so I still think there's a lot of room for getting back on track with a lot of things. And, we can all complain about everything, but we also can say, hey, it really is a pretty good product.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. And also motorsports wide around the globe right now, I feel is just like on such an uptick. Bobby, again, you're really qualified to talk on this because, NFL guys, Major League Baseball guys, there's 20 retiring every year. There's several retiring every week. But I think when you have a guy like Martin Truex Jr., who's been a champion, you were champion, and you have to leave something you do every day and you think about every day, and it's just such a fabric of your life. What's going through Martin Truex's mind right now, do you think, in terms of him making that transition in life?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think that, for me, when I stopped racing full time. I kind of had 2 or 3 different phases. So when I stopped racing full time, it was like, well, I get to, I still get to race a little bit. I'm okay with that. And my brother told me, he says, you'll find out you got a lot more friends at home than you thought you had, and that really didn't even care about racing. I was like, okay, so I did. And so I kind of enjoyed that a little bit. And, but at the same time, it's the lure of, you could be frustrated with, hey, I'm not winning enough. You could be frustrated with, too much travel and too much time away and all that stuff. But man, there's something about it. You don't just walk away. And I think for Martin, I think that, what a career he's had, and, winning the championship for Furniture Row and winning races for, he'll still win races before the year is over. He might win a championship. We don't know that yet. Nobody knows, but he's definitely qualified. And, but at the same time, hey, he kind of sees it like, hey, it's time to leave. But it's hard, man. It's hard when you're that good and you're that competitive. And, you wish that sometimes, the off season was enough to reset sometimes, but it's not always enough for everybody. But I think Martin's just, probably see something different in his life, and he loves a lot of things and people, and fishing and hunting and things like that. And he'll plenty of time to go enjoy and do that. But I'm sure he'll miss racing more than he thinks today. If I had to guess.
Hey, Bobby, this is really fun for me, us back on TV again together. It's been way too long, but we certainly had a good time back in the day, back in the Fox studios. Sure love those times.
Yeah, that was fun. I didn't hear the last part. What'd you say?
I said we sure had fun back in those times.
Oh, yeah. We had fun. Yeah. Yeah, so no, we had fun, and yeah, that was great. Obviously, I got to know you and Jeff Hammond a lot more, and we've been friends for a long time. But when we did the race day shows, it was a lot more simpler than they have been over the past few years. It's gotten a lot more into it, and we used to show up on Sunday, talk about what we're going to talk about, and then we go do it, right? And it was I was like, man, I'm kind of new to this. I'm glad I got you guys to talk me through it. But I always laugh at ourselves back at that time, because we're sitting there in a meeting, right? We're all shorts, t-shirts, or whatever. And then we go on air and talk about Hammond. He just shows up. He's been there, but he just kind of come out of the bathroom, and it's like 3, 2, 1, boom.
Out of the tanning booth, too.
Yeah, the tanning bed. Yeah, tanning bed. Yeah. And so, but I just think about that as like, man, that was so much fun. We had such a good time. It was on a lot of Sundays, almost every Sunday, and we just got to do what we wanted to do, and got to talk about racing, and how exciting it is. And yeah, so to work with you and everybody there, and that was a blast. And kind of I got my feet wet starting to do that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And obviously I heard your voice. I heard your voice on the radio before Iowa. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So yeah. So anyway, I think I was before I got home, or I was coming home from the golf course, and I listened to the pre-race show and stuff like that on the radio. But yeah, fun. The Fox deal was great, and doing it with you was the best part.
Bobby, thank you so much for joining us, man. Great to talk to you, brother. We appreciate the time, and I hope to see you very soon.
I can't believe you're going to say it's over, because we just got started, man. We got more to talk about. I guess we'll have to do it another day, but I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Time to end the program like we do every week with a segment we call Ward Burton Said It. After he jumped out of a wreck in the MBNA Pontiac, Ward Burton looked at the TV camera and said, "Car ain't worth a damn, crew ain't worth a damn, driver ain't worth a damn." I tend to disagree with Ward. I think everybody was worth something there, but it just was a bad day at the racetrack. Want to thank Barry Cantrell and Stillhouse for the graphics for Lights Out. Want to thank you for joining us this week. Be safe, everybody, and we'll see you next time around.